Students in college must often excel amongst their peers in order to obtain a job after graduation. In order to do so, many choose to participate in internships to gain experience and build their resumes. Unfortunately, internships are often unpaid opportunities. Unpaid internships are pervasive in the political or government sector because of current laws exempting the government from paying their interns, as well as the government's inability to afford to pay interns without creating a tax or reallocating federal or local budget spending. Unpaid interns take on extensive costs, such as relocation fees, transportation, and food costs, all without compensation. It may be more difficult to hold a position as an unpaid intern without socioeconomic privilege because the costs of unpaid internships may be too much of a burden. If a student or recent graduate has socioeconomic privilege and can participate, they are more likely to fulfill an intern-to-staffer pipeline, thus perpetuating class privilege in American politics and government. It is beneficial for political and government hiring teams to consider compensating their interns. Compensation may provide more diversity in the office, as well as better quality interns who are learning useful skills and may more easily become employees who are already trained in systems, thus making political campaigns and government offices more efficient. Unpaid internships are found in almost every professional field, but interns without socioeconomic privilege might find that working an unpaid internship is simply not feasible. Writer Dorothy Manovich uses an analogy of a circus to argue that unpaid internships are analogous to the fiery hoops that we jump through in hopes of a career prospect, but unfortunately, we can't all afford a ticket to the circus. Manovich explains that this creates a system that favors the well-endowed over the less privileged. David Yamada is an author and professor of law with courses on employment law and legal internships, who argues that ultimately, the practice of unpaid internships often boils down to exploitation and the affirmation of privilege. Not only do privileged students have an easier opportunity holding unpaid internships, but unpaid internships are exploitative as they have become an expected rite of passage and undermine the basic exchange of compensation and decent treatment in return for work rendered. In fact, the National Society of Experiential Education states that roughly half of all internships are unpaid, which demonstrates the prevalence of unpaid internships, which allows for exploitation and the perpetuation of privilege. Blair Hickman, an author for ProPublica, conducted a year-long investigation of the intern economy. Her study points out that exhaustive data on interns doesn't exist. Though a handful of research institutes conduct annual internship surveys, the federal government doesn't track statistics on the intern economy. ProPublica's investigation found that anywhere between 500,000 and 1 million people intern for free every year. Though unpaid internships can be found in almost every professional field, they are far more prevalent in the political sector, as government internships are exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act, which states that interns must be paid or else provided educational experience at their internship. The United States Department of Labor's fact sheet states, "The FLSA makes a special exception under certain circumstances for individuals who volunteer to perform services for a state or local government agency. Unpaid internships in the public sector and for nonprofit charitable organizations where the intern volunteers without expectation of compensation are generally permissible." The FLSA, along with the Congressional Accountability Act, allow government offices to avoid paying political interns because they are not considered covered employees. In fact, the FLSA does not apply to government employees because Congress picked and chose parts of the FLSA it liked, such as compensated overtime hours for covered employees or staffers, while eliminating or altering the parts it did not want, such as compensation for interns. Due to these laws, unpaid internships in the political sector are very common. Christina Greer, an associate professor of political science at Fordham University, and Alexis Grenell, a political strategist and writer, wrote an opinion editorial for the Washington Post titled, "Presidential Candidates Ignore the Costs of Unpaid Internships." Greer and Grenell hired a Fordham University student to telephone presidential campaigns and ask whether their interns were paid. They report that in the 2016 presidential race, only one candidate, Senator Bernard Sanders, paid his interns. This same trend is seen in the office of the president, Congress, and on local campaign levels. According to a report conducted by The Atlantic, only 35 of the 100 senators on Capitol Hill pay their interns. In addition, members of the House of Representatives pay their interns at a far less rate than congressional senators because they receive less funding from the government to run their offices. Carlos Mark Vera is the founder of Pay Our Interns, a bipartisan, nonprofit organization that aims to increase paid internships in both the government and private sectors. Carlos Mark Vera and Daniel Janab published a report which reveals that in the United States Senate, only 51% of Republicans and only 31% of Democrats pay their interns. And in the United States House of Representatives, only 8% of Republican representatives and 3.6% of Democratic representatives pay their interns. Unpaid internships are widely prevalent at both the state and local level as well. New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio, Mayor Joe Hogsett of Indianapolis, Governor Butch Otter of Idaho, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, and Councilmember Helen Rosenthal of New York are all guilty of offering unpaid internships. Unpaid internships are seen at almost every level of government and in each American region for candidates seeking to hold elected office and those who have already become elected officials. Katherine Durack writes on the costs of unpaid internships in her piece, Sweating Employment, Ethical and Legal Issues with Unpaid Student Internships. She writes, "In short, students must pay, and pay dearly, to become uncompensated workers. These costs add up, and when time spent at an internship is not being monetarily compensated, the internship may become a financial burden on many of the interns participating." Time journalist Alexandra Mondolak conducted a breakdown of the total costs of an out-of-state internship in Washington, D.C., stating that an internship in Congress will cost each intern roughly $6,000. The associated costs of unpaid political internships may influence which students are able to participate or which students are likely to apply for these positions. Socioeconomic privilege is a prerequisite for an unpaid political internship. The National Association of Colleges and Employees claims that students with families making over $120,000 a year are more likely to be unpaid interns than students from families earning under $80,000 per year. Moreover, these socioeconomic disparities among unpaid political interns may also lead to racial divides. Greer and Grenell argue that unpaid political internships are particularly devastating for Black and Hispanic students because they do not usually have the same financial resources as their white counterparts. The B.A. Rudolph Foundation's research on unpaid interns matches Greer and Grenell's findings. Hispanic American students have the lowest rate of internship participation at 53%, followed by African American students at 59%, Asian American students at 63%, and Caucasian students at 68%. I conducted a survey through Google Forms to ask fellow intern colleagues about their experiences. This survey was distributed to roughly 300 people, comprising 21 questions and receiving 79 responses. Though this survey was not scientific or representative of all unpaid interns, it serves to anecdotally reinforce the previously cited data about racial demographics. This chart depicts that when compared to the United States Census Bureau's statistics, white students are overrepresented, while Black students and Hispanic students are underrepresented in unpaid political internships. My findings reinforce Greer and Grenell's argument that Black and Hispanic students are underrepresented in unpaid internships, and the B.A. Rudolph Foundation's findings that Hispanic and Black students are the least likely to hold these positions. The following charts demonstrate the working conditions for unpaid interns. When asked if they had funds remaining for discretionary activities such as entertainment and fitness, 83% of respondents said yes, while 16% said no. Respondents were also asked what sort of expenses were involved in participating in the unpaid internship. Respondents marked transportation, relocation, housing, food, and clothing costs. The questionnaire also asked respondents to specify which income sustained them during their unpaid internships. The majority marked parental or family support. Respondents were also asked if they took out student or other types of loans in order to participate in their unpaid political internships, and 93% responded that they did not, while 6% responded that they did take out additional loans. Interviewees were asked to explain the long-term benefits of holding their unpaid political internship. One respondent stated that the Facebook alumni groups, reunion meetups, and mixers have kept me in touch with former political staffers, as well as in the loop for potential job openings. Interviewees were asked if they believed that political interns should be paid for their work. Participants responded with a resounding yes. One intern mentioned that political internships with elected officials should be paid because it's in the public's interest to give work opportunities, particularly government jobs, to a more diverse pool of young people. A respondent summarized by stating that unpaid internships prevent individuals from lower income backgrounds from entering the political sphere and accessing the same networks that will hopefully help me down the line with my career needs. The financial barrier precludes many from accessing these opportunities and perpetuates the predominantly white and wealthy workforce of the political world. I asked respondents if they had spoken to their employers about compensating political interns. All respondents stated that they had not spoken to employers about this issue. Though all respondents indicated that they believed interns should be paid for their work, not a single respondent brought this issue to his or her employer's attention in fear of repercussion or because he or she felt it did not apply to them. Paying interns for government and political work may be especially beneficial to the sector, not only because it may promote diversity, but also because paid interns are an asset when teams are looking to hire for full-time positions down the line. Paid opportunities produce a better quality of applicants and thus produce better interns. These interns learn the processes and trainings and may be more likely to produce quality work. It is clear that unpaid internships are prevalent in the public sector and are arguably unethical and undemocratic when considering the American democracy. Vera and Janab write that the most significant consequence of unpaid internships is the creation of a homogeneous political climate. When only those with socioeconomic privilege are able to afford these unpaid political internships, a clear dissonance arises between the congressional bubble and the rest of America. These internships can be crucial for career development. But as Vera and Janab say, the voice of the average American is muffled when the only people entering politics are the economically privileged. If members of Congress are serious about a representative democracy, they should compensate their interns. We can begin by educating members of Congress on which politicians pay their interns and how they do so, and then advocate for paid internships that are need-based to ensure both socioeconomic and racial diversity. Unpaid internships in the political sector are inaccessible for those without socioeconomic privilege, and thus unethical for America, a country where all people are supposed to be treated equally and have access to equal opportunities. The political sector is in desperate need of more transparent statistics on unpaid interns. Once these are available, members within the sector must reconsider whether employing interns without pay is a serious ethical problem they want to address or simply another inequality they want to ignore.